Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about a truth most people never see until it's far too late. It's the truth that quietly haunts the avoidant long after the relationship ends, the truth that keeps them awake, scrolling through old messages, revisiting memories they swore they didn't care about, replaying moments they told themselves were nothing. And that truth is this: avoidants can leave the relationship, but they cannot escape the bond they had with the super empath. Now, who is the super empath? They're not just kind, they're intuitive. They're emotionally intelligent. They have a rare blend of resilience and softness. They see people, not the performances, not the masks, not the armor, but the person underneath. And that's exactly why the avoidant is so drawn to them in the first place. Most people never get to truly know an avoidant. They meet the version that keeps everything surface level, the cool, distant, controlled version. But the super empath? They slip past the defenses without even trying, not by force, but by presence, by patience, by emotional safety. And here's the thing about someone who sees you this deeply. Once they've seen you, you can't pretend they don't exist. So the avoidant pulls away. They do what they've done their whole life: disconnect, detach, retreat. But what they don't realize is that the bond doesn't break just because they walk away. In fact, leaving only intensifies it, because the avoidant suddenly loses what they never knew how to handle: consistent emotional warmth, stability, understanding, and a connection that doesn't demand perfection, only honesty. And make no mistake, avoidants are not unaffected. They feel everything. They just don't process it in the moment. They don't lose feelings. They delay them. The super empath moves on by healing. The avoidant moves on by avoiding. And avoidance always has a delayed cost. It always catches up. One day, the avoidant looks back and realizes, that person knew me deeper than anyone else, and I'll probably never have that again. Not because the super empath was perfect, not because the relationship didn't have flaws, but because the feeling of being emotionally understood without being pushed or judged is not something you can replicate. You can replace people, but you cannot replace safety. You can find attraction, but you cannot recreate understanding. You can date others, but you cannot duplicate a bond that was built on emotional truth rather than emotional fear. The avoidant doesn't say this out loud, of course. They'll never verbalize it. But inside they know. This is why they come back around. This is why they check your social media. This is why they remember little things you forgot you ever said. This is why they can't fully invest in the next person, because they didn't lose you. They lost the version of themselves you brought out, the calm, the safety, the openness, the emotional freedom. And that kind of connection isn't something you get over. It's something that marks you. It changes you. It leaves a blueprint. The truth is, the avoidant may run, but the bond stays, because you can escape a relationship, but you can't escape someone who touched your soul. Avoidants have a natural tendency to protect themselves by maintaining emotional distance. They build walls around their feelings, carefully constructing a version of themselves that is safe for the world to see, yet keeps others at arm's length. To most people, they appear composed, confident, sometimes even aloof. But beneath that surface is a deep fear of vulnerability, a fear of being seen and rejected, a fear of losing control over their emotions. The avoidance life is a series of carefully managed interactions where connection is measured and feelings are tightly regulated. Most people never break through those barriers because the avoidant has learned, often through repeated experiences, that revealing their true self can be risky. They are adept at hiding what they feel, at giving just enough to seem engaged without ever truly exposing the depth of who they are. And so, for the average partner, the connection remains on the surface, limited, controlled, safe, but never truly transformative. Enter the super empath. This person is different because they possess an innate ability to sense and understand emotions in a way that goes beyond words or behaviors. They notice what is unspoken, they intuit what is hidden, and they respond with a level of emotional attunement that feels almost like magic to someone who has spent a lifetime guarded. When the avoidant meets the super empath, they are met with curiosity, patience, and consistency, qualities that make it possible for their defenses to slowly soften without the pressure of exposure. The super empath does not demand change or push for intimacy. They offer presence, understanding, and a mirror that reflects back not the avoidant's constructed persona, but their true self. This is disarming for the avoidant because it creates a space where they can be fully seen without fear of judgment, ridicule, or suffocation. The power of the super empath lies in their ability to make the avoidant feel safe while simultaneously allowing them to experience the freedom of genuine connection. They do not attempt to control, fix, or manipulate the avoidant. Instead, they validate the avoidant's feelings and gently model emotional openness. The avoidant begins to sense that being vulnerable is not synonymous with being overwhelmed or rejected. They start to trust, not just in the super empath, but in their own capacity to navigate emotions without losing themselves. For the first time, the avoidant encounters someone who sees past the masks, someone who recognizes the loneliness and longing that hide behind distance and detachment. This type of connection is both rare and transformative because it touches a part of the avoidant that rarely experiences being fully known. The avoidant feels simultaneously challenged and supported, drawn to the empathy without being trapped by it. They begin to experience a paradox, wanting closeness while fearing it, feeling seen while still longing to retreat. Yet the super empath's consistent presence reassures them that their true self can exist and be appreciated, even with all its complexities and imperfections. Over time, the avoidant internalizes a sense of being understood in a way that they have never experienced, creating a deep, lasting imprint on their emotional world. This connection becomes almost impossible to erase because it is based not on temporary attraction, circumstance, or convenience, but on genuine recognition of the avoidant's inner truth. The avoidant may leave, resist, or avoid further contact, but the experience of being truly seen leaves a mark that lingers. It is a bond that is quietly powerful, a connection that reshapes the avoidant's understanding of intimacy, trust, and emotional openness. Even when distance grows, the memory of being understood and recognized in such a profound way continues to influence their thoughts, feelings, and future relationships, often in ways they cannot articulate, but always in ways they feel deeply. Avoidants have a unique way of handling emotions. They don't disappear from their lives, but they push them to the back burner. Unlike empaths or highly sensitive partners who feel and process emotions in real time, avoidants tend to suppress dela. Why or compartmentalize what they feel? When a situation calls for vulnerability, closeness, or emotional honesty, their instinct is not to face it head on, but to withdraw, distract themselves, or rationalize their feelings. This coping mechanism has often developed over years, sometimes decades, as a means of self-protection. They have learned, often unconsciously, that showing too much of themselves or relying on someone else emotionally is risky, and that retreating is the safest way to maintain stability. From the outside, it may appear as though the avoidant has moved on easily after a breakup or conflict, but this is a careful performance. Their heart and mind are not fully aligned. They are delaying the emotional reckoning rather than avoiding it entirely. The super empath, by contrast, experiences emotions in a fully engaged way. They process joy, pain, connection, and loss as they happen. Their awareness is immediate, their understanding intuitive, and their emotional response is integrated. This natural contrast between the avoidant's delayed feelings and the empath's present processing creates a powerful dynamic. While the empath is able to express care, concern, and understanding in real time, the avoidant is still operating in a delayed mode, only half present in the emotional space. They may smile, nod, or appear attentive, but their internal processing is on hold, often buried beneath layers of self-protection and rational thought. This is why avoidants are frequently misunderstood. They are not unfeeling, but their feelings do not always manifest in ways that others recognize, and often they emerge long after the fact. When an avoidant exits a relationship, whether consciously or as a defense mechanism, it does not mean that the bond is broken. The emotions that were unprocessed, attachment, longing, affection, even regret, remain simmering quietly beneath the surface. Because avoidants have delayed their emotional engagement, the aftermath of separation can be unexpectedly intense. They may experience flashbacks to moments of vulnerability, replay conversations in their minds, or feel pangs of connection they had previously suppressed. They often mistake these feelings for weakness or confusion because they are not accustomed to engaging with emotions in real time. The delayed nature of their feelings makes it difficult for them to articulate what they are experiencing, and even more difficult to act on it. The empath's presence during the relationship amplifies this effect. Because the super empath processes emotions fully and communicates them, the avoidant begins to feel the depth of what they have lost only after the fact. The delayed realization can be disorienting. The avoidant may feel longing, guilt, or regret without a clear understanding of why or how to resolve it. This is why many avoidants find themselves drawn back, even unconsciously, to the people they have left. The bond has not faded, it has been stored, waiting for the avoidant's delayed emotional awakening. Over time, this delayed processing can create a cycle of avoidance and longing. The avoidant may resist closeness, believing they have moved on, while their emotional undercurrent continues to pull them toward the person who truly understood them. Even in new relationships, this delayed emotional imprint affects their ability to fully invest or trust, because the benchmark set by the empath was so deeply resonant and emotionally complete. Avoidants do not lose feelings, they postpone them, and those postponed feelings often return with a force that surprises even themselves. It is in this way that avoidance is never truly a clean break. It is a pause in emotional processing, leaving the avoidant forever linked to the bond they once had. The bond between an avoidant and a super empath is built on more than attraction or shared experiences. It is grounded in something far rarer: emotional safety. Most people and avoidant encounters do not provide this. They come with expectations, demands, or judgments that trigger the avoidant's instinct to withdraw. Avoidants are constantly scanning relationships for signs of threat, subtle cues that might expose them, overwhelm them, or push them into vulnerability they are not prepared to handle. Emotional safety, then, is not a luxury for them. It is a necessity. When a super empath enters the picture, they bring an unspoken sense of stability. Their presence communicates without words that it is okay to be oneself. No performance is required. No armor is necessary. No pretense is demanded. The avoidant begins to realize that the space they are in is non-judgmental, consistent, and accepting. This allows them to relax in ways they rarely do and experience intimacy on their own terms. What makes this emotional safety so profound is that it is not conditional. The super empath does not love or care only when the avoidant behaves a certain way or conforms to expectations. They are not transactional. They are consistent. This constancy is often something an avoidant has never encountered before. Throughout their lives, they may have learned that love or attention is contingent on performance or compliance. The super empath disrupts this pattern by offering presence and understanding simply because it is possible to see and accept another human being as they are. Avoidants are drawn to this naturally, even if they are initially wary. The safety allows them to experience connection without fear of being engulfed, criticized, or abandoned. When the avoidant leaves the relationship, the loss of this safety creates a vacuum that cannot easily be filled. It is not just the person they miss, it is the environment the super empath created, the way they felt able to exist without constant vigilance. Other relationships may offer excitement, attraction, or companionship, but rarely do they replicate this level of emotional attunement and reassurance. The avoidant might try to convince themselves that they are indifferent, that they are free, that the past no longer matters. But beneath the surface, the absence of emotional safety resonates. It lingers in subtle ways, moments of longing, reflection, or even comparison. They realize, often belatedly, that the connection they left was not superficial. It provided something essential, something rare. This is why the bond cannot simply be replaced. Emotional safety is difficult to manufacture artificially and even more difficult to maintain consistently. For the avoidant, the experience of being truly understood, supported, and accepted without pressure leaves a mark. It reshapes their understanding of what connection can feel like. Even when new relationships appear promising, the benchmark of that prior bond remains unconsciously present. The avoidant may resist noticing it, rationalize away the importance of the past, or even deny that they were ever fully affected. But the imprint of emotional safety, Rima. Ultimately, the Super Empath's gift is the creation of a space where the avoidant could be fully seen and fully known without losing themselves. When that bond is broken, the avoidant feels the absence deeply, often without realizing why. Emotional safety is not a superficial comfort. It is the foundation of connection, trust, and intimacy. Without it, the avoidant may experience closeness superficially, but never with the depth or security that they once had. And this is why, even after distance, separation, or attempts to move on, the bond with the super empath continues to echo through the avoidant's mind, heart, and future relationships, quietly shaping who they are and what they seek. When avoidants reflect on their past relationships, what they often miss most is not the person in front of them, but the version of themselves that existed when they were with that person. With the super empath, avoidants experience a rare and paradoxical phenomenon. They are able to be more open, more attuned, and more emotionally available than they usually allow themselves to be. The empath's presence and consistency create a space where the avoidant feels safe to drop their defenses, even if only partially, and explore emotions they typically suppress. They find themselves laughing more freely, sharing thoughts more deeply, and confronting vulnerabilities that would normally trigger retreat. The avoidant does not just connect with the empath, they connect with a part of themselves they rarely get to show the world. This version of themselves, the open, trusting, and emotionally expansive self, is intoxicating precisely because it feels forbidden. For so long, the avoidant has navigated life through control, self-protection, and distance. The super empath subtly rewires this pattern, creating a mirror in which the avoidant can see their own potential for emotional presence and connection. It is a version of themselves they admire but often cannot access outside of that relationship. When the bond ends, the absence is not just of the person they loved, but of the person they were able to become around them. This loss can be disorienting because it is a loss that is less tangible, less about physical presence and more about identity and emotional capacity. The avoidant may initially respond with denial, convincing themselves that leaving was necessary or that they are indifferent to the loss. Yet beneath this rationalization lies an undercurrent of longing. They notice patterns emerging in new interactions. The ease with which the empath elicited openness is rare. The patience and attunement they offered is uncommon, and the ability to feel safe without sacrificing autonomy is almost impossible to replicate. The avoidant may find themselves frustrated or puzzled in subsequent relationships, struggling to connect at the same depth while simultaneously fearing intimacy. This tension arises because the super empath did more than simply offer love. They provided a mirror for self-growth, a space for authentic expression, and a sense of acceptance that shaped how the avoidant experienced themselves. Over time, the avoidant may realize that the person they lost is not just someone they cannot replace, but that the state of being they were allowed to inhabit, vulnerable, seen, and unguarded, is equally irretrievable. Other partners might offer companionship, adventure, or even emotional connection, but rarely do they facilitate the emergence of this version of the avoidant self. This is why avoidants often revisit memories or feel drawn to reconnect. Even unconsciously, it is not just the other person they remember, but the experience of feeling fully recognized in a way that allowed them to temporarily inhabit their own emotional potential. The loss. As of this mirror leaves a unique kind of longing. Avoidants can sometimes articulate it as missing the other person, but what they are truly mourning is the temporary liberation from their habitual emotional armor. They are mourning the absence of a version of themselves that felt more alive, more open, and more human. It is a reminder that intimacy is not only about closeness with another, it is also about closeness with oneself. This is why, even when avoidants seem detached or unaffected, the bond with a super empath leaves a lasting imprint. It is a blueprint for who they can be when truly seen, a standard that shapes their emotional experiences, and a memory that continues to influence the choices they make in future relationships. Even after an avoidant leaves a relationship, the connection they shared with a super empath does not simply vanish. It lingers quietly like an echo in a room that was once filled with conversation and laughter. The bond leaves a permanent imprint because it was not built on superficial attraction, fleeting convenience, or conditional affection. It was built on understanding, presence, and emotional attunement that the avoidant has rarely experienced elsewhere. This imprint manifests in subtle ways, in memories that resurface unexpectedly, in comparisons made unconsciously with new partners, or in moments of longing that the avoidant cannot fully explain. It is a quiet, persistent reminder that the experience of being truly seen and understood is irreplaceable. Avoidants are not used to having their emotions fully acknowledged. Most of their lives, they have navigated relationships with caution, hiding or suppressing parts themselves to maintain control and avoid potential rejection. The super empath disrupts this pattern by offering acceptance and understanding without judgment. This allows the avoidant to experience a level of emotional depth that is both rare and transformative. Once they have felt this, it leaves a benchmark, a standard of connection that is hard to forget, let alone replicate. Even if the avoidant consciously moves on, this internalized memory continues to influence their perceptions and behaviors in relationships that follow. It shapes the way they approach intimacy, trust, and vulnerability, often in ways they do not consciously recognize. The permanence of this bond is also reinforced by the nature of human memory and emotional encoding. Emotional experiences that evoke deep understanding and safety are not easily erased. Unlike superficial connections, which fade with time, bonds forged through genuine empathy and mutual recognition are encoded in the avoidant's emotional memory. They may attempt to rationalize the past, minimize their feelings, or distract themselves with new experiences. But the emotional imprint remains. It affects their emotional responses, their attachment patterns, and their capacity for trust in ways that are subtle, yet profound. Even the act of comparing new relationships to past ones carries the influence of this enduring bond. Another reason the imprint is lasting is that it touches both the avoidant and the empath at their core. The avoidant does not only miss the person, they miss the experience of being allowed to exist fully in a space of emotional safety. They miss the version of themselves that could emerge when they felt seen. This dual impact, the loss of the EMP, and the loss of self that was nurtured in that connection, creates a resonance that cannot simply be replaced by another relationship. The memory of the bond becomes a benchmark for what is possible in connection, which makes subsequent interactions feel comparatively shallow or unsatisfying, even if the avoidant is unwilling to acknowledge it outwardly. Finally, the bond leaves a blueprint for future relationships. Avoidants may not realize it consciously, but they carry the lessons, memories, and emotional patterns from their experience with the super empath into every subsequent interaction. It becomes a quiet standard of what emotional depth, understanding, and safety can feel like, shaping their choices, expectations, and even fears. The connection does not need to be active to remain influential. Its presence is embedded in the avoidant's emotional landscape, guiding, reminding, and occasionally haunting them. This is why, even years later, the avoidant cannot truly escape the bond. They carry it within them as an indelible part of who they are, a reminder of what they experienced and what they are capable of feeling when truly seen and understood. In conclusion, the bond between an avoidant and a super empath is unlike any other. It leaves a lasting imprint that transcends time, distance, and even the avoidant's attempts to move on. It is a connection rooted in understanding, emotional safety, and the rare ability to see and be seen fully, shaping both who the avoidant is and who they can become. While avoidants may run or detach, the memories, the growth, and the emotional resonance of that bond remain, quietly influencing their hearts and future relationships. Thank you all for listening and allowing yourselves to explore this powerful truth about connection, vulnerability, and the lasting impact of truly being seen.